Cold calculations. Dominic Thorne stared at the cityscape from his penthouse office, his reflection in the glass as cold as his intentions. At 42, he had built Thorne Innovations into a tech empire through calculated risks and unwavering focus. But 3 years ago, everything changed when his trusted colleague, Vincent Reed, orchestrated a betrayal that cost him millions and his revolutionary sustainable energy project. "Mr. Thorne," his assistant Naomi Chen interrupted, "I have the information you requested." Dominic turned, his steel-gray eyes narrowing as he took the file. Inside were photos of Sophie Bennett, 31, an award-winning wildlife photographer whose conservation work had recently gained international recognition. She was also Vincent's newest investment prospect. "Perfect timing," Dominic murmured, studying a photo of Sophie. Chestnut hair fell in waves around her face, her green eyes bright with passion as she spoke at a fundraising event. "She has no idea she's just a pawn in Vincent's latest scheme." "Sir," Naomi hesitated, "are you sure about this plan?" "Using Ms. Bennett seems—" "Vincent used her first," Dominic cut in. "He's only funding her conservation project to access protected land for his mining operations. I'm simply intercepting his strategy." What Vincent didn't know was that Sophie and Dominic had a brief connection years ago, before his rise to prominence. One evening at a charity event in Costa Rica, where Sophie was exhibiting her photography. They'd shared conversations about her wildlife protection dreams, a dance under the stars, and a kiss that Dominic had occasionally revisited in his thoughts before burying it away. She wouldn't recognize him now. The struggling entrepreneur she'd met had transformed into someone harder, refined by success and scarred by betrayal. "Arrange a meeting at her upcoming exhibition," he instructed Naomi. "Make a substantial anonymous donation to her foundation first." 3 days later, Dominic entered the gallery showcasing Sophie's latest work. Endangered Wonders. The photographs captured animals in their natural habitats with such intimacy that viewers felt transported into their world. He moved through the crowd, watching Sophie from a distance as she passionately explained her conservation efforts to potential donors. When she turned and their eyes met, Dominic detected a flicker of recognition that quickly transformed into curiosity. He approached with practiced ease. "Your work is extraordinary," he said, extending his hand. "Dominic Thorne." "Sophie Bennett," she replied, her handshake firm. "Have we met before?" "Perhaps at a similar event," he deflected. "Your reputation precedes you. Your jaguar conservation project in Brazil is particularly impressive." Sophie's expression brightened. "You're familiar with my work?" "I make it my business to know about impactful initiatives," Dominic replied, noticing how animated she became when discussing her passion. "I understand Vincent Reed has shown interest in your project." "Yes, his investment would be transformative," Sophie said. "Though I'm still working through some of the details with him." Dominic's jaw tightened imperceptibly. "I may have a better proposition. Would you join me for dinner to discuss it?" Something in her hesitation told him she was sensing the intensity beneath his polished exterior, but her practical side won out. "I'd be interested to hear more." As they parted ways with plans to meet the following evening, Dominic felt the first twinge of something unexpected: guilt. He dismissed it immediately. This wasn't about Sophie. She was simply the means to destroy Vincent's latest scheme and reclaim what was rightfully his. The fact that she was unknowingly walking into his trap was unfortunate, but necessary. What he couldn't anticipate was how her genuine smile would stir memories of a simpler time, before success had hardened him. Before he'd learned that in business, sentiment was a weakness others would exploit. This was just business, he reminded himself. And in business, Dominic Thorne never lost. Paper promises. The restaurant Dominic selected for their meeting exuded understated luxury, a private dining room with panoramic views of the city lights. Sophie arrived in a simple emerald dress that complemented her eyes, her professional demeanor masking her wariness. "I appreciate you meeting me," Dominic said, gesturing to the chair a waiter pulled out for her. "I've taken the liberty of ordering the chef's tasting menu unless you have other preferences." "That's fine," Sophie replied, studying him. "Though I'm curious why a tech mogul is interested in wildlife conservation." Diversification, he answered smoothly, and perhaps a desire to leave a more meaningful legacy than quarterly profits. As they progressed through dinner, Sophie shared her passion for protecting endangered species, particularly her current project to establish a sanctuary for jaguars in Brazil. Dominic listened intently, noting how her hands gestured animatedly when she spoke about her work. Vincent Reed promised funding, she explained, but his team keeps adding clauses that would permit sustainable resource extraction within the conservation zone. Exactly as I suspected, Dominic thought triumphantly. Vincent hasn't changed his methods. Vincent has a history of disguising exploitation as philanthropy, he said carefully. I have a different proposal. Sophie's eyebrows raised. I'm listening. I'll fully fund your conservation project, triple what Vincent offered, with no extraction clauses. He paused, watching her expression shift from skepticism to cautious hope. In exchange, I need a partner for an upcoming acquisition that requires a specific public image. Partner? Sophie repeated slowly. A wife, Dominic clarified. A temporary arrangement, 1 year, after which you'll receive the full funding regardless of outcome, plus a generous settlement. Sophie's face flushed with indignation. You want to buy a wife? That's a business arrangement, he interrupted. Nothing more. You need funding. I need a particular image to secure this acquisition. It's simple mathematics. There's nothing simple about marriage, Mr. Thorne. It would be in name only, he assured her. You'd have your own space in my home, complete independence except for required public appearances. Sophie's laugh lacked humor. This is absurd, is it? You're facing bankruptcy trying to self-fund your conservation work. Vincent's offer comes with destructive strings attached. Dominic leaned forward. I'm offering clean funding and complete control of your project. Her eyes narrowed. Why me? Surely there are women in your social circle who'd jump at this opportunity. You have credibility in environmental circles. Your reputation for integrity is valuable for this particular acquisition, he explained, the lie coming easily. Plus, you're not entangled in the society gossip that follows most of my acquaintances. Sophie fell silent, considering his words. Dominic could see her calculating, weighing her principles against the reality of her financial situation and the animals she was determined to protect. I need time to think, she finally said. Of course. Take 48 hours. When Sophie called the next morning requesting a meeting, Dominic knew he had her. They met at his lawyer's office, where Sophie reviewed the contract with her own attorney present. The terms were generous but specific: appearances at key events, residence at his penthouse, and a convincing public persona as his devoted wife. Why do I feel like I'm making a deal with the devil? Sophie murmured as she signed the document. Dominic's smile didn't reach his eyes. The devil would offer far less for your soul. The wedding was a small civil ceremony followed by an extravagant reception designed to generate maximum publicity. Vincent's shocked expression when he received the wedding announcement was everything Dominic had anticipated. The business world buzzed with speculation about the tech titan's whirlwind romance with the passionate conservationist. As they danced at their reception, Sophie's body remained rigid despite her camera-ready smile. Relax, Dominic whispered. No one will believe we're in love if you look like you're being tortured. Perhaps because I feel like I've sold myself, Sophie replied through gritted teeth. You've secured the future of your jaguars, he reminded her. Focus on that. Later that night, as they entered the penthouse as husband and wife, Sophie paused in the foyer, suddenly looking lost despite her determination. Your suite is through there, Dominic indicated a hallway. You'll find everything you need. Naomi arranged your belongings. Sophie nodded, relief evident in the slight relaxation of her shoulders. Thank you for respecting the boundaries we discussed. As she walked away, Dominic reminded himself that compassion had no place in his revenge. This marriage was merely the first move in a strategic game that would culminate in Vincent's downfall. What he didn't anticipate was how empty his victory would feel as he listened to the soft click of Sophie's door closing between them. Cracks in the armor. 2 months into their arrangement, Dominic found himself increasingly distracted by Sophie's presence in his home. She had transformed a corner of the penthouse into a makeshift studio where she edited her photographs and conducted video calls with her conservation team in Brazil. Her passion seeped into the previously sterile space, bringing an unexpected vitality. In public, they performed their roles flawlessly. Sophie charmed the business elite at corporate functions, her genuine interest in people making her a surprisingly effective partner. Dominic noticed how others opened up to her warmth, revealing information that proved valuable in negotiations. "You were impressive tonight," he commented as they returned from a charity gala where Sophie had helped secure additional donations for environmental initiatives. "Don't sound so surprised," she replied, kicking off her heels with a sigh. "Just because I prefer jaguars to corporate sharks doesn't mean I can't navigate their waters." Dominic found himself smiling, a genuine reaction rather than his calculated public expression. "I'm beginning to think I underestimated you." "Most people do," Sophie said, curling up on the sofa with a glass of wine. "It's actually an advantage in my work. No one expects the woman with a camera to understand the politics behind conservation." He sat across from her, loosening his tie. "Tell me about the first time you photographed a jaguar." The question surprised both of them. It wasn't part of their script, nor did it advance his plans for Vincent. Yet Dominic found himself genuinely curious. Sophie's face transformed as she described tracking the elusive cat through the rainforest for days before capturing a single image. "When our eyes met through my lens, I felt seen, assessed by something ancient and powerful that existed completely outside human concerns." "That feeling," Dominic said quietly, "of connecting with something larger than yourself? I used to have that with my work." "Used to?" He hadn't meant to reveal that much. "Success changes perspectives. Or perhaps revenge narrows them," Sophie replied, watching him carefully. Dominic stiffened. "What does that mean?" "I'm not blind, Dominic. This marriage, the acquisition you're pursuing, they're connected to Vincent Reed somehow." She set down her glass. "You forget I've spent years observing predators. I recognize the look of a hunter stalking prey." His silence confirmed her suspicion. "What did he do to you?" she asked softly. The unexpected compassion in her question broke something loose within him. Dominic found himself telling Sophie about the sustainable energy project Vincent had sabotaged, stealing both the technology and investors while Dominic was hospitalized following a car accident. "He didn't just take a business opportunity," Dominic concluded. "He took my purpose, creating affordable clean energy that could have helped millions." Sophie's expression held no pity, only understanding. "So this marriage is part of reclaiming what he stole," Dominic confirmed, watching her process the revelation. To his surprise, Sophie didn't storm out or lash with accusations. Instead, she asked, "Am I just collateral damage, or is there something specific about me that serves your revenge?" The directness of her question deserved honesty. "Vincent has been pursuing you, not for your conservation work, but for land access. I intended to use our marriage to block his plans while gaining access to information that would expose his methods." Sophie absorbed this with remarkable composure. "I appreciate your honesty, even if it's belated." She stood, moving toward the window. "What happens when your revenge is complete?" "When you've won! The contract remains. You get your funding regardless." "That's not what I asked," she said, turning to face him. "What happens to you when vengeance no longer drives you?" The question unsettled him. No one had challenged his motivation in years, not even Naomi. Before he could formulate a response, Sophie approached him, her proximity sending an unexpected current through his body. "There's something I've wondered since we met," she murmured. "Something familiar about you." "We may have crossed paths at an event years ago," he conceded, his heart rate accelerating as she studied his face. "Costa Rica," she said suddenly. "The wildlife benefit. You were different then, passionate about bringing affordable solar technology to developing regions." Dominic tensed. He hadn't expected her to remember their brief encounter. "You kissed me on the terrace under paper lanterns," Sophie continued. "I wondered what happened to that idealistic man." He discovered idealism doesn't survive betrayal, Dominic replied, his voice rough. Sophie reached up, her fingers gently touching his face. I think he's still in there beneath all this armor. Before he could retreat behind his carefully constructed walls, Sophie leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. Unlike their public displays of affection, this kiss held no pretense. It was a question, an invitation, a challenge. When their lips parted, Dominic found himself breathless, his carefully laid plans suddenly seeming hollow compared to the genuine connection crackling between them. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Reminding you there's more to life than revenge," Sophie answered. "The question is, are you brave enough to remember?" Shattered plans. Dominic avoided Sophie for 3 days following their kiss, burying himself in work and meetings. The acquisition of Vincent's company was approaching its critical phase, and he couldn't afford distraction. Yet Sophie's question haunted him. What would remain when revenge no longer drove him? When he finally returned to the penthouse late one evening, he found Sophie in the kitchen, making tea. "I thought CEOs were supposed to delegate," she commented, noting his exhausted appearance. "You look terrible." "Delegation is for tasks that don't require precision," he replied, accepting the cup she offered. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them until Sophie spoke. "About the other night, it was a momentary lapse," Dominic interrupted. "It won't happen again." "A lapse?" Her eyebrows rose. "Is that what you call it when two people connect genuinely for the first time in their fake marriage?" "Sophie," he sighed, "this arrangement works because of clear boundaries." "Which you established under false pretenses." Her voice remained calm despite the accusation. "You never told me I was a pawn in your revenge against Vincent." "Would you have agreed if I had?" "Probably not," she admitted. "But I would have respected your honesty." The irony wasn't lost on him. Honesty isn't particularly useful in business or revenge. "And which is our marriage? Business or revenge?" When he didn't answer, Sophie continued. "The board meeting for Vincent's company is tomorrow. What happens after you win?" "Justice happens," Dominic stated. Sophie shook her head sadly. "There's nothing just about what you're planning. It's just another form of destruction." Her words cut deeper than he expected. Before he could respond, his phone chimed with an alert. The security notification showed Vincent Reed requesting access to the building. "He's here," Dominic said, tension radiating through him. "Why would he—" "I contacted him," Sophie admitted. "Asked him for a meeting?" Dominic's expression hardened into something dangerous. "You did what?" "Before you explode," Sophie said quickly, "I didn't reveal anything about your plans. I simply said I wanted to discuss his conservation proposal independently." "You've been in contact with him behind my back," Dominic stated, cold fury replacing his earlier vulnerability. "Because I needed to understand both sides before tomorrow," she explained. "Your revenge is built on what he did to you. But have you considered the collateral damage of your counterattack? The employees who might lose jobs? The actual good his company might be doing despite his methods?" Dominic laughed bitterly. "You're defending him now?" "I'm advocating for perspective," Sophie countered. "Something your obsession with revenge has blinded you to." The elevator chimed, announcing Vincent's arrival. Dominic's jaw tightened. "Send him away." "No," Sophie stood her ground. "You've orchestrated this entire scenario. At least have the courage to face him directly instead of hiding behind corporate maneuvers and a fake marriage." The challenge in her eyes was unmistakable. Before Dominic could respond, Vincent stepped into the penthouse, tall, polished, and visibly surprised to find Dominic present. "Sophie," Vincent greeted her warmly before turning to Dominic with practiced cordiality. "Thorne. I was under the impression this was a private meeting." "My husband and I don't keep secrets," Sophie replied, the irony of her statement hanging heavy in the air, especially regarding business matters. Vincent smiled thinly. "How convenient that your whirlwind romance coincided with my investment offer." "Hardly coincidental," Dominic stated coldly. "More like strategic intervention." Understanding dawned on Vincent's face. "So that's what this is about. You're still bitter about Terragen." He turned to Sophie. Did he tell you about our past? How his recklessness nearly tanked a revolutionary project? That's not how Dominic described it, Sophie said carefully. I'm sure he painted himself as the victim, Vincent scoffed. Did he mention the corners he cut? The safety protocols he ignored? The accident that hospitalized 3 researchers was a direct result of his haste to be first to market. Sophie turned to Dominic, questions in her eyes. Is that true? He's twisting the facts, Dominic growled. The accident occurred after Vincent sabotaged the prototype. Healing hearts, the boardroom of Reed Innovations hummed with tension as executives and major shareholders gathered for the vote that would determine the company's future. Dominic sat rigidly at one end of the table, Vincent at the other. The empty chair beside Dominic seemed to mock his confidence. When Sophie finally entered 10 minutes late, both men straightened. She had chosen neutral territory, sitting at the middle of the table rather than beside either of them. Her professional attire and composed expression gave nothing away. Let's begin, the board chairwoman announced, detailing the competing proposals from Vincent and Dominic for the company's direction. Vincent spoke first, outlining his vision for expanding their energy sector through new extraction technologies. He emphasized job creation and profit margins, occasionally glancing at Sophie to gauge her reaction. When Dominic's turn came, he discarded his prepared presentation. Instead, he placed a flash drive on the table. This contains evidence of safety violations and environmental cover-ups in 3 of Reed Innovations' current projects, he stated. I intended to use this information to force a takeover and reclaim what was taken from me 3 years ago. Murmurs rippled through the room. Vincent's face darkened. However, Dominic continued, I've realized that perpetuating this cycle of corporate revenge serves no one. Not the employees who depend on stable leadership, not the communities affected by our projects, and certainly not the planet we're supposedly developing sustainable solutions for. He looked directly at Sophie, whose surprise was evident. My proposal has changed. Instead of a hostile takeover, I'm offering a merger focused on genuine sustainability. TerraGen's original vision was clean energy accessible to all, not profit at any environmental cost. Dominic turned to Vincent. We were both wrong. You compromised safety for profit. And I became so focused on proving I was right that I lost sight of why the work mattered in the first place. Vincent's expression wavered between suspicion and curiosity. What exactly are you proposing? A joint venture with independent oversight, Dominic replied. Combining Reed's distribution network with Thorne's new solar technology, but with transparent operations and a commitment to environmental protection. He handed a document to the chairwoman. This proposal includes the appointment of an independent environmental impact director with veto power over any project that violates established sustainability guidelines. All eyes turned to Sophie as Dominic continued. I'm recommending Sophie Bennett Thorne for that position, provided she's willing. Her expertise in conservation and corporate accountability makes her uniquely qualified. This is a stunt, Vincent protested, though his objection lacked conviction. Actually, the chairwoman interjected, reviewing the proposal, it's quite thorough. The financial projections are sound, and the sustainability commitments are exactly what our shareholders have been demanding. After 2 hours of discussion, the board voted. Dominic's revised proposal passed with a narrow majority. As the meeting adjourned, Sophie slipped out without speaking to either man. Dominic found her on the rooftop garden of the corporate building, gazing at the city below. Did you mean it? She asked without turning. About the environmental oversight? Or was it just another strategic move? I meant it, he said, maintaining a respectful distance. These past months with you, they changed something in me. Reminded me of who I was before ambition and revenge became my only focus. Sophie finally faced him. In Costa Rica, you told me you wanted to create technology that would help people, not just profit from them. I believed you then. I lost my way, Dominic admitted. But you helped me find it again. Why should I trust anything about this marriage now? Her voice held both hurt and a fragile hope. It was built on manipulation. You're right. Which is why I've brought these. He offered her an envelope containing divorce papers. You're free to walk away with the full conservation funding as promised, plus the settlement. Your position as environmental director isn't contingent on our marriage. Sophie took the envelope but didn't open it. And if I don't want to walk away? The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. Then we start over, Dominic said, his voice rough with emotion. No contracts, no pretense. Just two people seeing if what sparked between us is strong enough to build something real. It won't be easy, Sophie warned. I'm still angry about being manipulated. I'm not asking for forgiveness yet, he replied. Just a chance to earn your trust. Day by day, decision by decision, Sophie studied him, searching for sincerity. The man I met in Costa Rica, the one who kissed me under paper lanterns and talked about changing the world. Is he still in there? He's finding his way back, Dominic answered honestly. With your help, if you're willing. Sophie stepped closer, placing a hand on his chest. I saw him when you changed your proposal today. That took courage. It took clarity, he corrected. Seeing what really matters. Slowly, deliberately, Sophie tore the envelope in half, letting the pieces scatter in the wind. I don't want an ending, she murmured. I want a beginning, a real one this time. When their lips met, the kiss held no calculation, no strategy, only the tentative promise of redemption and the surprising discovery that sometimes, in failing to execute the perfect revenge, one might stumble upon something far more valuable. 6 months later, Dominic and Sophie stood together in the Brazilian rainforest, watching as rehabilitated jaguars were released into the newly established conservation sanctuary. Funded by the merged company and protected by legally binding agreements, the project represented everything they now stood for, both professionally and personally. Worth more than revenge? Sophie asked quietly, her hand finding his as they watched the magnificent cats disappear into the underbrush. Dominic pulled her close, remembering how his carefully orchestrated vengeance had crumbled beneath the weight of unexpected love. Infinitely more. As the sun set over the rainforest, they walked hand in hand toward their future. Two people who had entered a paper marriage but discovered that sometimes the most powerful contracts are the unwritten ones forged between healing hearts.